We're EarthForce. We are a national nonprofit and the home of Environmental Action Civics. In field chats, you'll hear research-based, actionable tips and inspiring stories of youth-adult partnerships that empower young people to become environmental decision makers. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started.
Welcome and hello everyone to Field Chats, Environmental Action Civics Essentials, brought to you by EarthForce. I'm Taylor Ruffin, Colorado Program Manager with EarthForce, and I'm joined today by Mary Seawell. Hello, Mary. Do you mind introducing yourself?
No, not at all. Thanks for having me on, Taylor. My name is Mary Seawell, and I am the founder of an organization called Lyra Colorado, and we've been working on an initiative called the Seal of Climate Literacy.
Yeah, and that's really what we're gathered today to talk about is the Seal in Climate Literacy and the work Lyra has done to pass Senate Bill 2414. So this is actually state legislation that Lyra has helped move forward. And so in your words, Mary, can you just give us a description of the Seal of Climate Literacy itself to start?
Absolutely. So the seal is a high school diploma endorsement. And basically it shows that a high school student has met requirements to show proficiency in climate literacy. And there's three very accessible elements. One is a high school science course. A lot of people don't know in Colorado that's not a high school graduation requirement, which is a little shocking, but most school districts do require science. The second is a second course that could be another science. It could be a concurrent enrollment, could be an art course, humanities. It just has to have climate literacy standards embedded in it. And the third is an experiential learning project that students do. And the only requirements for the project are that it relate to the student's own experience and community, and they have to report out on it. So yeah, it's pretty doable.
Absolutely. And yeah, it really aligns with kind of the EarthForcean process, how we, turning that knowledge into action. So like you're saying, these first two components are coursework related to science and in some form, climate literacy. And like you said, it could be these other realms kind of like tied to it, humanities or art, which I think is really great, kind of tying into student lived experiences and their strengths, which is awesome. And yeah, the experiential learning project, which is kind of that action piece, which we at EarthForce are really interested in youth doing and leading.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it's been going great. Is it the first or second year of implementation?
We're in the second full year of implementation. Interestingly, right after it passed in May and was signed by Governor Polis in May of 24, immediately 13 students in Durango School District who had testified on behalf of it attained it. Last school year, the 25-26 school year, 24-25 school year, pardon me. That was the first full year, and over 420 students attained it in the first year, and a huge cross-section of rural students, Denver students, Boulder, like throughout the state. It was really interesting. And this year we think the number is going to triple. So the growth potential is really exciting, and we've been just sort of really wanting to make sure from an equity standpoint that all children or students are having access to it. So that's the other thing we've been focused on.
Absolutely. And yeah, I like the administration of it. And so yeah, let's dive a little bit. I think it's very exciting right now. And like, we're really claps to the program as it is. It's awesome. Students are engaging, but actually getting this passed. So to kind of start off, like, how did the process start with either drafting policy language or just the process of getting a Colorado legislation passed?
Great question. So it started about 2 years before it was even introduced. And my organization had been working a lot in rural Colorado and looking at like, how are people thinking about climate and climate change in terms of what it means for youth in these highly impacted communities, often very conservative communities. So really based a lot of understanding on this is doable, and it really, if it relates to the community values and norms, and there's maybe an economic benefit to it, it's much easier for people to adults to engage on this. And we were seeing from high school students and middle school students where they were all in, and it was more like there was this barrier between, the adults and the system and then what youth wanted, even Republican youth. So knew we couldn't be in all parts of the state. And I thought, what if we created something that incentivized or created or showed the demand for students around climate change education? And had seen something called the Seal of Biliteracy, which most high school students are really familiar with. And it's basically showing proficiency in multiple languages. And I thought, what if we do this for climate? And so went to Senator Chris Hansen, who I had worked on other policy work in education with before. He was state senator in Denver, and proposed this to him. And I and my organization, we actually drafted the policy and legislation and worked. He connected us to the drafters that are actually professionals and know what they're doing in the legislature. And we just sort of went back and forth and crafted this. And then he secured a House sponsor. So because it was Senate, it started there, but he found Barbara McLaughlin, who was a representative of Durango, which was great because Durango was one of the areas we worked in the state. And together they moved it through. And my organization, Lyra, we helped get educators and students and all these people we've been working with around the state coming in and testifying and showing the demand and interest in this. And it passed, which was great. And then Governor Polis signed it into law later at the end of the legislative session.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think it seems a little bit monumentous, kind of passing state level legislation and how many people were involved. So you're talking about certain Senate members, House members, kind of, do you have a number of total individuals? Or you had your organization. So how many folks were engaged in this process with you?
That's a great question. Not that many in terms of the design, the strategy. We didn't hire a lobbyist. We really were we think we can do this, and based on Representative McLaughlin and Senator Hansen's opinion. So really what came to us, and I think where the numbers came from, was on that youth organizing. And so then for the Senate Education Committee, which was the first hearing that the bill had, all the way to the House Education Committee, we made sure that there were these voices, these diverse voices demanding this, and actually showing how this feels good. Like, this is an optimistic, hopeful endeavor. And I think that brought a lot of the legislators on board. I can, as someone who cares deeply about science and climate and environmentalism that I've devoted my career to, I'm really not that persuasive. A junior in high school in Steamboat Springs is incredibly persuasive. A high school student that is going to a charter in Brighton, Colorado, is much more persuasive. And so we just did let's rally, let's find them and bring them. And there wasn't a lot of objection. So we didn't need to maybe do that lobbying route, for example. Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah. And especially having that small group of individuals crafting the language, especially around those components you were saying around value and community need. I think that was very transparent in the policy language, saying that it's really rooted in this place-based element, your locality. That's right. Although students are going to be getting, your general education requirements for science, and then more climate literacy aligned coursework, and then an experiential learning project that is really rooted in the community and addressing those community needs, building resilience, or just addressing certain climate-related challenges, regardless of where that climate change is happening. It's just it is happening, and it's impacting our lives presently, especially like you're saying with the communities you're working with in rural locations, and trying to make sure that their livelihoods are maintained. And so getting students engaged. So there's so many fun facets to this particular conversation on this big level, like state and organization, and then bringing in those youth. So what was some of the process? Did the youth reach out to you? Did you reach out to the youth? Maybe give me a little bit more flavor about the partnerships and engaging young folks in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our organization had worked especially with rural Colorado. So the first step was actually talking to rural superintendents who we had worked with and said, hey, do you think you have students that would be interested in being in support of this? And so having that high trust already with some of these communities, I think, was really important. And I think I know they trusted that we were not trying to politicize high school students in their community. We really were lifting up their voices, and that, I think, was very compelling. And so there just was a lot of trust, and thinking specifically about Karen Chesser in Durango, the superintendent there. she already had students who had created an environmental club, and they were already really thinking around climate. And so her willingness to connect us to those students who are now part of a statewide coalition called Good Trouble, it just was that trust. So I think that's where it started. I had a long history. I used to be on the Denver school board. So within Denver, I knew the superintendent and others, and knew that Denver Public Schools, for example, had been doing so much already around climate and sustainability. They had some amazing members of that administration that were really creating that priority. They opened the doors to their students. Same with Boulder. So it was, and also when people started to hear about it, and we did a lot, as much as we could as a small organization, of letting others know this was happening, people did start reaching out to us. And it was always that they'll vet us, and then they'll be like, okay, like this feels good, and then connecting us to their students. So, but it was very much through educators, education systems, and then students to kind of get that support.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's interesting, and you said something that sparked this in me, this really is about existing organizations, existing work that's already happening. So like, Earth Force and your incredible programming, we don't need a new organization or a new initiative. So much already exists. So how can we create something that that people who already work with youth, where there's already that deep trust, can sort of use their programming to help students attain this? And I think that also created this real interest and goodwill. This was about anyone coming in and being part of this. And as we've expanded from Colorado nationally, I think we're trying to do that in other places as well.
Yeah. And I agree. Yeah. The goodwill and the momentum. I think the bill passing helped a lot of organizations that work in environment and education feel like, okay, we have this thing we can build around in a local space. Mm-hmm. And then, like you're saying, these connections, I think having it be doled out at the district level. And I think that might have also helped, where it's like, all right, as a district, it's your responsibility, and you have the agency to kind of confer this diploma endorsement in a fashion that suits your needs as a district, which I think that flexibility is important, because not all districts are the same. Not all communities are the same. So their ability to be able to structure something for them specifically is really great. Like provides that agency at both like an administrative level and then even at an educator level, like as you go down these spaces. It's really great.
Well, I think so too. And if it had been mandated by the state onto some of these communities, there would have been real pushback, or I think accusations of this was a political overreach and those different pieces. So by making it local control, which education in the state of Colorado already is, our hope is that, we'll have these early adopter school districts and schools, organizations helping them, and then we'll be able to highlight those stories and elevate those stories so that other school districts, and it eventually expands. And the goal obviously is at some point, we're just talking about good science, impactful experiential learning and, education for students. And everyone will be like, oh, this is okay. This is all good. We can do this. And our students want this, and can really help adults figure out how to support and encourage education around climate change.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love this conversation because it touches and draws and pulls on so many different things. I think one really cool thing is the student testimony and them helping you testify. I think that's really important because as you and I, we're kind of registered electors. We can vote and exercise our civic mechanisms in that way. I think young folks are in this unique space where they can't necessarily vote, but their voice and their First Amendment rights, your ability to speak and assemble and organize, maybe not so much petition, but even then, adult allyship, I think is a great highlight of this, where you had these adult actors being like, this is really important. And then students coming in and saying, yes, let's support and work together, collaborate. And I think that's really awesome.
A great person who I'd encourage you to maybe have on a future podcast. So on Friday, remember I referenced that group Good Trouble out of Durango, and those students were the first to attain it right after it passed. So one of the leaders of that is now in college, and she organized a lobbying day around climate issues on Friday and today. And so they are, really what came out of organizing, I think for the first time around the seal, have expanded that now to 4 bills that they're either working in support of or against. And they've mobilized youth around the state to be advocating for it. So it feels like that's the thing, like all of these ripples can happen over something small. And so that would be a really great person to talk to, and some of the youth that are really leading on this. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. I will be reaching out. And yeah, I've been trying to follow some of the Youth Advisory Council elements and really exploring a lot of these youth-facing mechanisms on the civic level, both on a state, county, or even local. That's something that EarthForce is really trying to provide more structure around. I think it's kind of like
needed.
Learning about the mechanisms within your community that you can engage with to advocate for change that you want to see around any topic, honestly. But it's kind of like the skills and the experiences to be able to do that, I think are somewhat missing. But with things like the Seal of Climate Literacy, students can gain that experience and those skills through that. It's awesome.
And we really need students that are now trained, I think, to advocate to their local school boards, because I think there's school boards that would love to do this. And I think if youth could, like, how do I approach my school board and what does that look like? And how does public comment work? Like, these are very easy things to move forward now that the infrastructure is there. So I think youth serving organizations can play an incredible role in helping students be prepared and willing to do that.
Yes. And that's a lot of EarthForce projects, the environmental civic action process. And oftentimes, like you're saying, it is kind of this small lift, but high impact. Like students can provide this space and provide a presentation or an ask or a call to action to their school board, because it's right there.
And then the presentation itself becomes how they qualify for the Seal of Climate Literacy. So it's like an amazing, it's very, it's very circular and kind of cool.
Yes. So, to then hopefully prepare them for maybe larger types of acts, to be like, oh, then we're going to do maybe the town board or your city council members, or then going maybe at the state legislature and those things like that. I know we could chat about this forever.
I could not stop talking about it once I get started. So
I have one final question, though, I think we can wrap on is, a best practice that you would give to others interested in influencing state policy or trying to pass a similar initiative like this in another state?
Well, we're actually working with 4 states right now that are either 3 of them have legislation that's proposed and one of them's implementing it through their state Department of Education. So we're actually seeing in real time, California, Hawaii, and Minnesota all have legislation that's just been proposed in the last few weeks to create a seal of climate literacy. And so I think finding out the opportunities, connecting probably with youth in other states that have been part of this. And, if anyone's listening, and we're happy to connect people in other places to students here in Colorado that really went out on a limb to see and make this happen. That's, I think, that coalition building that youth can do. It doesn't have to just be adults, but I think bringing in organizations like EarthForce or Lyra to say, okay, we have this interest and we want to move this thing forward, whether it's the Seal of Climate Literacy or something else. What do we do next? And then we as adults in these organizations, that we are ready to go into action for them, being directed by youth. We don't have to lead it. They can tell us what to do. And that's a big philosophy and value of my organization is, we are not a youth-led organization, but we are a youth-directed organization. And we will always listen and sort of do what we're asked to do to help their vision.
Amazing. So thank you, Mary. And speaking of which, I think if individuals are interested in this, I think, you can Google Lyra Colorado, Seal of Climate Literacy. I think sealofclimateliteracy.org is a place that you can visit to learn more about the seal. There's also a great article that Mary wrote in Colorado Newsline, I believe. I read this in preparation for this podcast, and it probably will detail more of how the seal looks in a variety of different places. And I think that's a highlight of this initiative, is that it can look very different in different places to meet the needs of both districts, educators, and students and communities. So I highly recommend doing some research, those of you listening today. And with that, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you all for listening. And then let us know what you think about our podcast at earthforce.org/podcast. And don't forget to rate and review us at Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks, y'all.